Morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Johan. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Everest, and this webinar is sort of a new one that we've been doing on some roofing basics and roof attachments. And this is a NABCEP accredited course that we expanded recently. So if you haven't joined us before, everything is based on your Wi-Fi. So if you're having troubles connecting, or if you see any problems, you can type them into the question box there, and I can see that and address any of those questions. So I'll try to keep a little question box open there and answer them as we go. I do have my camera on. I'll show you guys some samples that I have here. Yeah, I'm in Northern California here. Everyone's still kind of sheltering in place. Travel is not happening as much. But this webinar has been expanded. It was normally an hour, now it's an hour and a half. So we have plenty of time. First time we did this around, we went over a lot of things, and we ran out of a little time. So we should have plenty of time here. If you do have questions, again, just type them in at the end there in the question box, and I'll keep an eye on them. But we will have plenty of time for a little Q&A towards the end. So I'll just hop into it. Some introductions. I'll introduce myself and Lauren, who is managing in the background. Logistics we already went over. As I said, it's all based on Wi-Fi, so if you're having troubles connecting, or if you can't hear me for some reason, sometimes these things mute themselves, which is pretty interesting. But that happened last time, so if it does happen, just type in the text box there in the question, and I'll keep an eye on that, or Lauren will as well. So we'll go a little bit over Everest as a company, and also just product overview, what products we offer for residential and commercial, and then obviously getting into some of the roofing basics as it applies to our systems for composition, asphalt shingle roofs, tile roofs, metal roofs as well, low slope roofs, also known as some flat roofs. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So all of these are actually broken down into separate webinars that we are planning to do. So if you want more in-depth information on any of this, please do let us know, because we're in the process of expanding a lot of our training. So if you want more information on one particular topic of these, either check our website if it's already on there, because we have offered a lot of new webinars and trainings. And then if you want any of these topics to go deeper, we'll probably end up doing a whole expansive roofing webinar. And we do have a lot of webinars in Spanish as well. So si hablas español, tenemos más webinars en otros días. So we have webinars in Spanish that cover more of a focus on the Latin American market and Mexico. So this is primarily focused on the US market, but if you have questions, go ahead and put it in. But we do have plenty of webinars that are solely in Spanish and focused on the markets in Mexico. And so again, my name is Johan. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Everest. I've been working in the industry for about almost 15 years. And I primarily work more on the training side, actually. I work on product development, product marketing, but also technical training. So picture on the right is out in Arizona at the old Energy Center, where they have a big array out there. We did some trainings with SEI. On the left, I thought it was kind of funny just because I'm wearing an Everest shirt, a quick mount hat, and installing Iron Ridge. So I started out as an installer. That's actually a volunteer program that we did out in Portland with Twin Day Solar. They do all kinds of nonprofit installations for nonprofit organizations that are trying to do good in the community. So that was an install in Portland for a homeless shelter. It was a great install, and a bunch of different people in the industry on board donating their time resources. So I come from the install background, and I love the technical training side, and obviously I'm managing the product marketing, but Dakota is our marketing manager. She's typically on our webinars, so you might see her from time to time. Lauren is our marketing coordinator. She is backing me up today, and she handles a lot of our social media and our newsletters, and our marketing team has expanded, and our marketing and training offerings have grown quite a bit. So we do a lot of product and install features and installs of the month and highlighted installs. So if you have pictures and you use our products, please do go and send them to us, and we will highlight your company and the install and things like that. So just getting to know the team, the Everest sales management team. You got Ross Gerard. He's our VP of sales. He's been with the company, I think, since the beginning of them starting here in the US when K2 brought over Everest. Brett Nielsen is our director of business development. You might have seen these guys around. They do a lot of sales and management with bigger customers and manage our team. So our outside sales team has grown. So if you're in any of these areas, please do check. We've got Nick Pack in the Western Regional. He's the Western Regional Sales Manager. Brad Bland, he's in the Midwest. He's based in Chicago. We just brought on Mark Jubenville. He's out in Texas. He's been in the industry for a while. He came on board a couple months back. Al Harsh has been with the company for quite a bit. I think he's the longest standing on the outside sales team, and he's on the East Coast. And let's see, it's no longer with us. He's not in the industry anymore, but I kept him up there just because he's been like family to us. So kind of an ode to him. But we have open positions as well. We've been hiring and growing quite a bit. Our inside sales team is doing keeping the train moving. With COVID, things have been challenging. Obviously, in the beginning, it was a little bit of a juggling act, but we figured things out. And being safe, being at the office where we need to be, still keeping safe and masks and all that stuff. But the operation is still running strong, and we've gotten a great position and method for dealing with all the restrictions and shipping. Things are going really well. So that's our inside sales team. They handle a lot. Alejandra, she manages the whole team. You might have heard voices like Nancy or Ryan and Manny and Luce handling technical sales and client services. They do a lot of design work. So if you're working on our base tool, they are usually they're in the Vista office. That's our headquarters for Everest. We also have an office in Guadalajara, actually, in Mexico as well. And we're a part of a K2 company, which is in Europe. So that started in Germany and has expanded quite a bit in Europe. And you can see we've done installs all over the world. So we're pretty well covered all over the world, and we're an international company. Everest is the US and Mexico arm that has been focusing the products on the US and Mexico market. So we have all kinds of systems for flat roofs, comp shingle, tile, standing seam, trapezoidal. We have some ground mounts as well, all that are part of the CrossRail family system. E-Dome, it's a little bit of a different. This is our platform for our racking system. So you might have recognized these. Excuse me. These are our most common racking systems. We have 48X, 48XL, and 80, and we just introduced 44X. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later after we go through the heart of this presentation. Just to recap and give you some updated information, we have been releasing a lot of new products. So this is pretty exciting. So the 44X is a new, pretty great product in the sense that it's optimized to have really strong engineering that is still within range of, doing snow loads, wind loads, high wind loads, and it's a strong rail but lighter weight. And I'll get into that as we go on and we talk about single tool system that we just released with 44X, where we improved all of our products. And I have some components here that I'll show as we get going. So I don't see any questions or comments, so I'm just going to keep rolling on. So the CrossRail system, as I mentioned, is our platform. So with all these roof attachments that we're going to go over, all of these lend to all these different systems. So we have the CrossRail dual rail, which you see on the left, which is pretty standard, where you have 2 rails for each row of modules, but the same racking and the same components do perform as a a shared rail system. So you can actually share the rail, like you see in the middle there on that metal install on the right. You see that picture, that image showing the rail that's sharing both the first and second row of modules. So that's our shared rail system, and as I mentioned before, it does share the same components as the dual rail. So it's a pretty neat product. We do a webinar talking about the differences of these. So we do a webinar on all of these systems. So if you want more information, you can check our website. We've recorded some of them, and some of them get repeated, so you can tune into those. But I'm just doing a quick overview of the systems that we offer that kind of lend to some of these roofing and roof attachments that we're going to be talking about. So the other CrossRail systems that we have is our CrossRail tilt up. So you can see there that it's for mostly on a flat roof system, where you can use actually a piece of rail to tilt up the back end. So you have that back leg, and there's a tilt connector there, and you use the rails and all these different orientations to have a tilt up systems, and you get different tilt angles. Our CrossRail 80 is mostly used for our ground mount system. So you can see there we have a ground mount system, and we have been working on a bunch of product improvements for all these systems. So you're going to start seeing some new features and products released here pretty soon. So roof attachments, we have the comp mounts, we have the EverFlash XP, as well as the eComp slider kit. We have the standing seam power clamps. We have 2 different versions, a standard and a mini, and then we have a couple of different tile hooks to choose from. So I'll get into these as we get into the roof types. Again, if you do have questions, please do comment in the question box, and we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So we have plenty of time. I don't anticipate us running out of time this time, so that is a huge bonus. So again, plenty of time for questions, so please do type them in if you have them. So I come from the background of working with mounting and roofing, and I was an installer as well. We did a couple of re-roofs, and one thing I learned as I transitioned from construction into solar installation and doing a bunch of re-roof or tear downs, a lot of times you have to check the condition of the roof. So the roofing side becomes extremely important, and a lot of solar installers are either electricians getting into solar, or they were roofers getting into solar, or they're specifically a solar trained installer, and they took classes at SEI or MREA and online and lab classes or community colleges, and there's a bunch of different solar specific classes. But there is a big heavy side of it that is roofing, and you really have to know what roofing you're dealing with. So again, I'm focusing this on the US market. So our primary residential types in the US are comp, asphalt, shingle, which you see there on the left, and then tile. These are more concrete interlocking tiles in these pictures, but I'll talk about all the different kinds that are out there. And in Latin America, they're obviously pretty popular with the tile roofs. They're just a little bit different style, and it's different what's underneath. And they also, you know, in the US and South America and Mexico and Central America, there's a ton of different metal roofs all over the world, really, but they're all different in how they build them out. So we did do a webinar on metal roofs recently, and it went really well. And it was me and Ernesto, and we talked about the differences in the US and Mexico, and as they're based in Mexico. And there was a lot of similarities there. And so we have some good solutions for all of these, and let's just hop right into it. So I do see some questions coming in, but I will get to all of these as we get going. So they are related to some of these that we're about to talk about. So let's get into the basics of the roofing real quick, because that's what it's all about. So there's some generic terminology. A lot of times we're talking about the ridge, we're talking about the rake, ridge caps, which, by the way, you never want to step on. I've seen a lot of people step on ridge caps. Do that. The valley typically has like a metal flashing in there. Underlayment is typically a felt paper underneath. And then shingles or tile. In this case, this is shingles because we're talking about comp shingle roofs. And then low slope versus steep slope. That is really, really important because some folks will install on roofs. I've seen a couple interesting situations where a homeowner installed on a separate kind of garage unit, and they had too low of a slope, which is, I think, around 2 and 12 is that kind of sweet spot where once you get too low there, then you can't install shingles. Or they have requirements, shingle manufacturers will have requirements to where if it's too low of a slope, like I said, typically 2 and 12 pitch, they will require like a ice water shield or some kind of adhesive underlayment underneath so that wind-driven rain doesn't get underneath the shingles. Or they just say you can't install shingles lower than such and such pitch. So they're all different. Excuse me, still drinking the morning coffee. But so the reason why I bring this up is because that homeowner that installed had a separate garage unit installed shingles, which seems easy enough. You go to the hardware store and you can buy shingles, watch a YouTube channel, and do yourself. But there's different regulations and guidelines. And so basically, long story short, I think it was in New Jersey. This was like 8 years ago. In New Jersey, a homeowner installed shingles on a separate garage unit that was, I think, lower than 2 and 12, or it might have been 2 and 12. It's very low slope. And they drove a bunch of holes in it and put in mounts, and they actually had water leaks before the mounting went in, but you couldn't tell because water leaks come in slowly and they work their way in, and it might be a year or so before you see some visible damage, or it might just seep in and you can see water logging and things like that. But but basically what happened, it was too low of a slope. The underlayment was saturated, and once they punched holes in the roof for solar, it leaked. So the solar installer was really freaked out. They did a big investigation and they figured it out together, and we helped them. And it turned out that it was shingles on a low slope roof, and it wasn't the right application for shingles. So if you look at that picture on the left, you see a low slope roof. Usually that is an example of like a torch down cap sheet. So it's not underlayment, or it's not shingled. It's actually rolled comp, and it's rolled out and torched down typically, or heated some way. So it's adhered to the roof, and there's no way you can get in between these layers. Whereas over there you see shingles, and the shingles, there's different types. So there's architectural, which is probably the most common, I mean, most popular shingles that you see today that are being newly installed. They call them architectural. That's the generic name. I have seen these bigger high definition ones called architectural. They just throw the right words around. But typically this one over here, where they're like, I think about a 3-foot section of shingle, and they install them in a certain way where they build from the corner and out. Whereas on the 3 tab down here, these have seams, and they're little shingles, but they have 3 kind of ears on them each, and they're a lot thinner. I would say the architectural are more of like a 20-year lifespan product. Just depends on the product and the manufacturer. They might claim 25 years, they might claim 15. 3 tab is definitely lower. It's thinner, it's cheaper. It's probably like a 15-year life product at best. But those are older, and I have still seen them installed on newer roofs, but they are the cheaper style, and they are a little bit more delicate. You can't really take a roofing bar to them, and they can tear pretty easily. You can always replace a shingle too. I mean, that's something you can YouTube and look at, and you can see how a roofer will replace one shingle. It's not hard to do. And then the high definition ones that you see there, those are, sorry, I'm moving around windows so I can see this a little better. So the high definition ones there, those are a lot thicker. They have these different staggered ears, and a lot of installers have trouble understanding where to put the flashing. So a lot of times they'll put a flashing in, and they'll want to, you know, have the penetration here, and the ear is blocking them from getting it up into the right nail line. So a lot of times those little ears on there, they're kind of decorative in some cases. So you can crease them and fold them back and cut them carefully. They actually break off pretty easily if you fold it cut it, and then you could slip the flashing up higher and make it flush. So if you don't know what I'm talking about and you deal with these roofs, you can always ask me. We have some examples of those I've seen in the past. So those up. So getting into kind of more of like a site survey type thing, this is really important, and I think it's glazed over. I don't see many people talking about this. At my old company, we did do a lot of training on this, and I'm sure there's folks who took on those trainings that are doing more about this. But qualifying the roof is extremely important. So I equate this to kind of like when you rent a car, right? You're going to walk around the car and you're going to make notes about dings, scratches, dents, cracks in the windshield, damage that wasn't your fault and it's pre-existing damage. So this is where you have that relationship with the homeowner. And I've seen people where, you know, the homeowner is a friend of mine and the solar installer went up there and one guy said, you need a roof replaced. Another installer said, we can do it tomorrow. So obviously, not to throw anybody under the bus, but some folks are more honest and some are overlooking things or not worrying about it, I guess. But if I was the homeowner, I would want to know the truth if there was some pre-existing damage. So I made just a, kind of a generic list. I think there's another list here coming, but basically just ask questions, do the research, and avoid liability if you can. So the picture down there is some examples of damaged shingles. That's really common. I've seen manufacturer defects, where you have cracked shingles. It happens a lot in like snow country, like Colorado gets a lot of damage, like hail damage, or sometimes freeze and thaw. If there's a crack, water will get in, it will freeze and ice will form and it will expand and then retract, and you get expansion, contraction, and movement, and it can create cracks or a chemical imbalance, or maybe they use the wrong sealant. There's a number of things that do happen. So so I do see some questions coming up, and they're kind of related to some things that are that are coming up here. So I'll just keep going, but I will answer all those questions. I'm really glad people are starting to ask questions. So again, asking questions to the homeowner, getting in the attic, looking for things like cracked rafters. It happens. Sometimes a rafter can get damaged just by walking on there. If you have a split in the rafter or there's a knot, that's exactly what's happening right there. There was a knot, maybe a nail busted through or a screw didn't like the pilot hole and forced the knot to push the, split the wood. Something might happen. You never know. Or water damage. Those are water stains there in the attic. Some of them might not be the installer's fault. So it's really, really crucial to cover your butt and make sure that you do all your research and figure out and be honest with the homeowner and find out. So some of the key things to find out, obviously the roof age. When was the roof rebuilt or installed, or was there a re-roof? Sometimes you get shingles on top of shingles. It happens. You want to know everything you can about the roof and do a little investigation. Who is the original roofer? If you can find that information, who is the roof manufacturer? Is always good to know. Are there any warranties in place? They might be long gone. Maybe the roof's so old you just need to replace it. Sometimes you can lump in that cost into the cost of the system if you're getting any kind of rebates in your city or state. Sometimes you can lump that into the cost because you do really need a nice new platform to put down solar that's going to last 25 years, or plan to come back and take the system down and re-roof. So you don't have to re-roof the entire house. You can re-roof just that section or just that roofing area. So it just depends. And this is why I say to know a roofer locally and have a relationship. If you're not a roofer yourself, there are going to be times you run into this situation where you need to re-roof, or maybe you need to make some repairs. So if I was the homeowner, like I mentioned, I'd want to know. I'd want to work with the guy who gave me the honest truth and said, look, your roof's got some damage and we need to get in there and fix it before you put down this, $25,000 investment of solar on your roof. So I would appreciate that honesty and try to figure it out and figure out the budgeting for it. So don't inherit pre-existing roof damage at all. So figure out the condition of the roof, do a little investigation. Sometimes the building department might have record of it being re-roofed or an add-on, truss systems, maybe the warranty, the roofer, you can figure that out. But sometimes that stuff's long gone. So I totally understand that. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do and make a judgment call and look at a shingle. I would say if you see A, B, C, or D there with shingles, I would replace it because those are damaged. So a lot of people ask me, how do you know when a comp shingle roof is toast and it needs to be replaced? If you look closely, a lot of times you can see where the fibers, like a fiberglass, they might bleed through. You can start seeing when it's starting to degrade. So I try to put some examples there. It's kind of hard to see, but just do a Google search and look for, damaged comp shingle, and you'll start to understand and see, or just look around. I definitely have that, that solar disease where I look at roofs all the time when I'm driving by, and you can see it from a distance when they're just totally toast. They have moss or stuff growing on them and it starts to degrade, and a lot of times they'll couple as well. You can't see that one in picture A is starting to couple and they curl. That's when you know they're starting to be degraded and or not do the job of keeping water. So I talked about warranties, and I'm sure you have a question with this, and the reason I bring this up excuse me, is because when you get up there and you poke a hole in the roof, you're taking on a lot of liability, and that's put onto the solar installer. So it's in your best interest, if you're the installer, to do some research and figure out if there's any warranties in place and see if you can maintain that warranty or use a product that's going to maintain the warranty. So there's two kinds of warranties that are typical. And again, these might be long gone, or you can't find any information and you got to start from scratch. So that happens. I'm not going to say you can always find the warranty information, at hand pretty easily, but the homeowner might know the history, or might have done a re-roof, or like I said, the AHJ might have some record. So the two typical warranties are going to be the roof manufacturer's warranty, which is their product warranty, the roof material itself. And a lot of times you want to make sure you check that out, because sometimes the roof can be too hot and they have workable temperatures. You can get on the roof at the wrong temperature and walk on a comp shingle roof and damage it and void the warranty of the roof right there. So you want to make sure you understand these things. And I don't want to scare anybody, because obviously if it's blazing hot out in Vegas, or Arizona, or even in Southern California, there's times where if it's reaching up into the hundreds, you got to be safe, and you want to go up in the morning and do it when it's cooler, or in the afternoon when it's cooled off, to do some of the mounting, and you can do it in stages. So just being conscious of that is important. And then sometimes the workmanship warranty and the installation is included. I've seen some manufacturers offering like a golden pledge type thing, where they say that the workmanship of the roofer he's an approved golden roofer, and they're approved to do the installation. So they warrant the roofing material and the labor, and if anything goes wrong in such and such years, which is typically anywhere from 10 to 25, I've seen, they'll warrant any issues that happen. Sometimes, some vent pipes might leak, or something might happen, or hail damage is a big one, like I said, in Colorado, and that's covered in the warranty. So if you go in there and blast holes in it and don't read any of this stuff, and you void the warranty yourself and use the wrong mount, I've seen a lot of products coming out that are not approved by roof mount manufacturers for sure, especially without flashings or any at least flexible flashing. I've seen people just installing L feet straight to the roof. That's going to void the warranty of the roof, and that's totally out the door. So if they get hail damage and you blasted holes in the roof and just put L feet straight to the roof, you're voiding that warranty of the roof. And if there's hail damage, you might not be able to get that roof replaced within the warranty. And then there's the roof the roof workmanship warranty of the roofer himself, and that's unique to each roofer. It's the installation of the system, so it's definitely unique to that roofer. It could be 5 years, it could be 15 years, it could be 25 years with some roofers. It just depends. Some are better than others, or they get certified by roof manufacturers. So one way to avoid this is using products that are within roofing best practices, or better yet, going a longer distance of getting roof letters of approval from roof manufacturers, which we've started to do with some of our comp mounts. So our EverFlash XP Comp has been approved by Certainty and GAF to not void the warranty of their roof. So it's because we've done a bunch of third-party testing and in-house testing, waterproofing, engineering to make sure that this is not going to leak. And so we have tested this quite a bit to have a really strong water barrier. And like I said, those warranties might be long gone. Maybe you just want to use a product that's pretty standard. A 9x12 flashing with some sort of waterproofing is the most common thing out there in the industry. You're starting to see these non-metal flashings, which if you're a guy in Vegas, like where you're trying to prop up shingles, you might tear them up. I totally get the concept of that, of not having a metal flashing to slip under there, but that waterproofing there better be very robust because roof manufacturers are skeptical. But I have seen some better technology put out, like Roof Tech does a lot of testing, and they have their flexible flashing, which we've been looking at for products as well. But right now we offer standard roofing flashings that incorporate a metal flashing, like the EverFlash series. We have the XP and we have the E-Comp kit, as well as the E-Comp slider. So that's for our shared rail system, to where you need I have a little example here. I can you actually see there I am. So I don't know if you can see my camera very well, but there's my this is the XP slider. I'm trying to look at my own camera so I can see what you guys are looking at. So this is the XP slider. It goes on top of a flashing that I have here. So typical flashing where you're going to slide this in and you're going to bolt down this slider plate, and then the L foot can slide north-south so that you have adjustability for a shared rail system. So that's been our most popular product for the shared rail. And then we have the E-Comp kit, which is basically a standard L foot over that same flashing, and our XP Comp mount, which is a little bit more of a rope. So a couple tips on shingle roofs, avoiding leaks. I've seen the #1 mistake I've seen with installers is when they install this flashing incorrect. So if you're looking at my camera, this is the flashing, and you can see on the screen there, that's a little screenshot from our video, where I've seen guys install this and they hit the nail line and then up at the top, and then this is overhanging the shingle, and they should install it where it lies. But if you're hitting nails, you either get over the nail or you need to remove the nail carefully without piercing the shingle and then shove this up higher so it's into that third course. The reason why they make these 12x12 or 12 inches on the height is so that if they're flush with the drip edge there, like you see in our video screenshot there, that's our video from our XP flashing. You can see at the base there at the bottom, it's flush with the drip edge. It's going to put that flashing, like you see in that's a little step from our assembly guide there at the bottom with the dotted line. You can see that the 12-inch flashing is going to get naturally into that nail line and be waterproof. And the reason being is you can see where sometimes there's a seam that might fall right on top of the flashing. And if it's not over all the way into the third course and there's no seam and it's not hanging over the edge too far, you're probably fine. It's not going to be the end of the world. You might get some debris collecting into there, but it shouldn't reach to the penetration, and you have no seams on top, then you'll be okay. But if you do have a seam there, they call it a keyway. If that is falling on top of your flashing, you'll see the tip of the flashing there, and water can get in there and get underneath the flashing and slowly work its way through the sealant and try to work its way into that penetration. So even worse, into pilot holes that are missed. So that picture on the right there, I'm just showing basically an example of color coordinating or coordinating with signs. It's really important with installers. There's usually an assembly line going on. So one guy is looking for rafters, drilling holes and securing the pilot hole, and sometimes you miss. So that's an example of the X being not the right hole and the circle being the hole for the lag screw, so that when the next guy comes in, he can seal it up and drive is lag bolt. The number one issue with water leaks that I've seen, I've gotten a lot of calls and I've diagnosed issues on the phone. Just happened like a couple months ago. A guy called me and said, I have roof leak from, this is an install like 8 years ago, and it had these mounts on there and it was flashed. And we had a big rainstorm here in Northern California. And when it cleared up, they went up there and tried to investigate. And I talked them through it, and we figured out that it was a missed pilot hole that wasn't sealed properly. So when you turn around and you drilled a little small pilot hole and you missed, you turn around and that thing can disappear. Shingles can fall, or granules can fall in there, and it just disappears, especially with the heat of the day. So you really want to mark those things out and be really conscious of how many holes you're drilling on the roof and try to avoid any kind of potential leaks install. So working efficiently is obviously key. Being on the roof, working with the right shoes, having fall protection, being organized with safety zones. Obviously, I see a lot of people wearing hard hats. I never really understood it on the roof, but down below makes total sense. If you're tools, you want to tape that off so no homeowners are walking in there and they can be liable for tools falling off the roof. It happens, or bolts. And then dividing up the work in stages. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of assembly line going on, people looking for rafters, and having all the right tools to do so and not borrow from each other and waste time. So being organized is really, really important. And so getting into the roof types and talk about finding rafters, a lot of guys ask, I've had people ask this question all the time, constantly, how do you find rafters? What's the best way to find rafters? Sure, everybody's got their own ways, but I typically, first thing I do when I walk up to a job site is look under the bay and see if you can see the tail ends of the rafters kicking out, like both these examples here. A lot of times that's the rafter there hanging out, or maybe there's a fascia that covers it, or sometimes you can have some big, huge beams that are just decorative and it's the tail end. That doesn't mean it's the actual rafter. It might not be structural at all. If it's huge, I'm guessing it's just decorative. So if you get a 2x4 or 2x6 kicking out, like you see here, and a lot of them, usually 16 or 20, 24 inches on center, it's a pretty good guess that that's the rafter. So if you have that, a lot of times what I would have guys do is if somebody's on the roof doing layout and I'm on the ground prepping materials or something, I would point out where the rafters are, and they would take a tape measure and just over the edge. I don't know if you could see my camera. I don't even know if this is helpful, but I have them take a tape measure, and if the rafters underneath here, I just have them literally just have the tape measure come off the roof and tell them where it is, and then they can make a little chalk mark at the end and mark some of the key rafters, and you can figure out if are these actually 16-inch on center, are these 24, and you can start marking the ends, and then you know where the rafters are and have a better guess, and you can do the knock method. It's usually what I do is just knock on it with your hammer, and you can feel when it's like looking for a stud in the wall. You can feel typically. Sometimes you can't feel it. Sometimes there's 2 layers of shingles. Sometimes there's skip sheathing that was covered by plywood. So it's really, kind of misleading on the sound or the feel. So at that point, I'd go in the attic and investigate and see what's going on in there. And then you can transfer measurement points from the attic and figure out where some of the rafters are. So it's pretty key to avoid drilling too many holes. There are some special tools. I know people have been trying to use some scanners. I've never really liked them on comp shingle roofs, maybe on tile with felt paper and ply and no skip sheathing. It could work. I have seen it work. But comp shingle is just too unpredictable, too thick and uneven. So, but I will say this Chips makes these tools. If you're wondering about these, I've seen these out in the field before. This is like basically making a nicer tool of the old drilling a hole you missed and putting copper wire in there and just feeling or a coat hanger and feeling where it is and then marking it. This is just a nice tool that specifically does that, and they have versions with magnets. It's just a kind of cool tool. I thought that was pretty creative. So Chip Tools, you can check that out. I just wanted to show you that because it's a nice little trick if you want to try that out. I've used it, it works pretty good. So finding the rafters is the same on tile roofs too. You got to pull out the tile and then you got to figure out where it is. With tile, it's a little easier because the construction is a little bit more simple. Again, this is focused on the US market, which are typically concrete interlocking tiles. Those are the most popular that you see in more modern construction, which is pretty popular right now. These concrete tile roofs, I've seen a lot of homes being built, whole neighborhoods with these concrete tile roofs. So that's on the top side there, and they're interlocking. They call it a cap and pan on each side, and sometimes they're hooked onto battens, sometimes they're just nailed in, and I'll go through that in a minute. But they're interlocking on the sides and they're concrete, so they're pretty heavy duty. You can feel it. Whereas the more, I guess, less common tile roofs, but still exist, are like the clay Spanish, I call them cap and barrel tiles, or some really funky old ones. I've seen asbestos ones. Those are weird, like it almost feels like condensed paper, but they're really hardy and kind of heavy in a different way. I've seen those still out there. They probably don't exist anymore as far as new home construction, but they are out there. And it's good to know when to call it and say, you know, somebody asked about a replacement tile flashing, which we do spec out a few different ones with our hooks. And you can't use those replacement tile flashings for these bottom kind of clay Spanish cap and barrel funky tiles. Those are built for concrete interlocking tiles that are on the top there. So you got the W shape, S shape, and flat, and they're pretty standardized, and that's why you see replacement flashings coming out these days, which we do support, and we can talk about that a little bit. So, and I mentioned Mexico having tile roofs, or South America as well. A lot of times they have these cap and barrel ones that you see down there. I've seen these in Florida as well. And I think this actually is in Mexico. If you look underneath, it's concrete. So in the US, it's typically sheathing, which is, you know, plywood or OSB, and then some kind of underlayment, which is typically a 30-pound felt paper. Sometimes 15, I doubt it. It's usually 30-pound felt paper, and it's lapped to be a water barrier. Or sometimes, like in Florida, where they have really high winds, they'll have an adhesive kind of peel and stick glued down underlayment to where it's glued down and it's kind of like a membrane. Or they use like a synthetic kind of underlayment that's more of like it's almost like a cloth material that's waterproof and it's impregnated with some felt or some kind of water barrier. And roof manufacturers have different products for this. I think GAF and Certainteed all have their own type of underlayment. I think Certainteed is a really popular one. So just, it's good to know what's underneath there. And then going back to the older times in the US, they had skip sheathing. So if you're wondering what that bottom right picture is, that's a nightmare for a solar installer, actually. That's going in the attic and looking up and seeing tiles. That is pre-code changes in the early 80s. They changed back then it was a uniform building code. They changed it. Now it's the IBC, International Building Code. But back then, they allowed skip sheathing and then just tiles right on top. And they still do this in Europe and parts of Latin America. But in the US, they had too many roof leaks and they just said no more. And now it is standard to have solid sheathing, then underlayment, and then the tiles, whether with battens or not, which I'll talk about in a minute here. But so that picture down there is when they changed it in the 80s to where, I think it was like the early 80s, they changed the code to where now all tile roofs have a solid solid sheathing and underlayment. That's why you see sometimes skip sheathing from older homes, or you see skip sheathing like that and then plywood on top of it. Is because probably it was a roof upgrade and they fixed it, and it's a nice roof actually. So all these things are good to know when you're installing on these roofs, because you're going to have to drill through these materials and figure out what's the best way to waterproof, what's the best way to attach, and how am I going to work on these roofs. So, and again, in Mexico, like I said, when they pull off the tiles, there's usually just straight concrete underneath there. So that takes different anchors. And if you're curious about that, our Mexico office has a lot of different suggestions for anchoring in concrete bolts and using either our tile hook or some of our other products that we have for attachments. So just depends on your preference and your wind zone and snow load. Obviously in Mexico there's not snow, but there is some high winds. So you can check, and if you have questions on that, I can put you in touch. If you're on the Latin America or Mexico side and you're wondering about that, you can our office there, and they do a great job. We have videos on that stuff too. So, and we're doing more and more webinars in Spanish to show these types of roof types more to those types of regions. So again, we're focusing on the US. I just want to make sure you understand that we have other offerings and other webinars. And again, keep typing in the questions. I will get to them, I promise. I see them coming in. It's good. I'm glad to see that, and I will answer that at the end. So so tile roofing basics, I mentioned. Now it's roof decking. You can see there, felt paper or some kind of underlayment, maybe a synthetic or adhesive, and then battens or no battens. This is, if you're in Southern California or Arizona or Northern California, this is where you're probably wondering why do this and why not. So the battens are these little 1-bys that go across. And the idea is there, and roofers argue this on both sides. Some roofers like these because they claim it's a faster install where they can just hang tiles on those battens, where they hang there at the top and they interlock and it's more secure and they don't have to nail every tile in. Whereas that's more Northern California, where I'm from. Arizona, I've seen it too, mostly battented. But in Southern California, it's kind of a mix. I've seen more and more direct attached tiles where they nail in the tile and they nail every single tile in, and they don't put in these battens. So, you know, some roofers have different methods and prefer different things. The Tile Roofing Institute, I think, supports both of these these styles of tile roofing, and you just have to look at what the manufacturer suggests and what's best for your crew. So the reason I bring all this up is because it's going to weight differently on how you pull tiles out, what you're installing, how these replacement tile flashings work, or tile hooks or grinding. Just depends. I mean, obviously if you have skip sheathing, you might have to do a roof upgrade or do a mount that installs on top of that skip sheathing, or you're going to want to figure that out. So it can get a little complicated. And then it's good to know too that there's drip flashings there. These are called like step flashings a lot of times, where it's designed to scoop the water up over any kind of ridge and get it, or gutter line, and get it into the gutter. So the reason I bring that up is because I've seen people try to drill through that when they're installing at the very base, like maybe with a shared railer system or something. But that's pretty common for all roof types to have some kind of little metal, like anti-ponding strip there on roofs. So I brought up the Tile Roofing Institute. If you don't know what the Tile Roofing Institute is, it is often referred to as the TRI, and they have manuals. So they're a nonprofit that writes manuals for roofing, for tile roofing best practices that end up being kind of the gospel to roof manufacturers. So they also teach classes on how to do tile roofing and do certifications. So it's an organization that writes these manuals for different regions, and they have it for, you know, Western states or Western regions. They have it for, I think, Central, East Coast, Florida. Standards are obviously different there. So there's all these different manuals, but a lot of them talk about waterproofing. And so this is where it becomes a little bit kind of confusing for the installer and for the inspector, because the TRI is a nonprofit that writes these best practices manuals. The roof manufacturers will often point to the TRI manual and say, this is the way we want our tile roofs to be installed, and the underlayment, the flashings, and all these things. So the thing is not every city abides by these rules. So roof penetrations is a really important thing to look at. So when you do a vent pipe penetration, the TRI says that you're doing any kind of penetration there, you have to have, you're going to have underlayment, you're going to apply underlayment, and then you have to have flashing at the underlayment level. So essentially double flashing, where you're going to have a metal flashing, and then you're going to have the top tile be penetrated, and you have a tile flashing there too. Some installers are like, really, do we need to really do this on all our mounts? We could just put sealant on here and goop it up and be good. Some want to do it by the book, so they get a metal flashing and they do a sub flashing underneath there, which it's more common to do like a 3-coursing or lapping it in with the paper, or sometimes they're using peel and stick or sealing pads, or like the flexible flashing I mentioned. So it just really depends, excuse me, on your jurisdiction. So a lot of installers know exactly what cities mandate this. I think like Bakersfield potentially. I think they mandate the sub flashing, underlayment, waterproofing, but some cities don't. So a lot of Northern California cities don't require this, and they're okay with using like an M1 or something on there and sealing up your bolts, or using sealing pads or other kinds of waterproofing. So we've been looking at this and doing some investigation with waterproofing with our tile hooks. So sometimes you don't want to, I mean, you can get a hood flashing and put it over these penetrations with hooks, but then you got to bring up, tar and seal it in. So we're doing a lot of waterproof tests on all, so these are our hooks that we offer now, but I will tell you a little, I guess, secret that we have a series of tile hooks coming at you very soon. And so this is our product offering now, but we do have a lot of hooks coming around the bend. And we took a lot of product feedback, and we have some really nice hooks. Like the 3S hook is a really cool hook. It's very robust, and it slides in and has different levels of height adjustability, and it has a return, so you can put an L foot on there, and a lot of guys like it because you have so much flexibility, a little bit with the L foot, the height adjustment, and then you have the slot on the L foot. So some guys want just a straight L foot, some guys want just a straight steel L foot, steel hook. So the thing about tile hooks is they do have a cantilever on it. They have that moment on the arm where you have the load here and the anchor here, and and you have that moment on the arm. So I know a lot of manufacturers will fight that their hooks are strong, or some will say that these other hooks are weak. So we did a lot of testing and a lot of investigation and looked at a variety of different hooks. And the frustrating thing for manufacturers, if we have any fellow competitors on here, we deal with a lot of installers all over the nation. Some guys want to do it and they want it robust, and they want that K2 German engineering, and they want our biggest, beefiest hook. And some guys are in Arizona and they don't have huge wind loads, and they want just the cheaper, just steel, simple hook with some adjustability. So we have all kinds of different offerings for our tile hooks. We have our single hook, which is eventually going to be phased out probably once our new hooks come in. We have our 3S hook that will stand the test of time and will still be around. And then our flat tile hook was semi-new. We came out with it last year, I believe. And that's a more robust tile hook. It's very popular in Northern California, or you're getting more tile roofs in Colorado and like Portland area, Oregon. You're starting to see more tile roofs come into play, and a lot of times they're flat tile. So we made a specific flat tile hook, and it's kind of tapered up, so it is a stronger hook and won't deflect so much because you got some snow load area for that. And then someone did mention replacement tile products. We do spec out a couple different ones that are made by some partner manufacturers that we work with, and we're also looking at all different kinds that work and are compatible with ours. So we do have some offerings we could spec out for you guys. And then we have some new products on the way that we're working on for all of our tile systems. So you can get on our newsletter. That's the best way to get updates on that. So Another thing with tile roofs that I've seen done before, my throat, is this inlay system. I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is definitely not on the Mexico side because you can't do this on concrete roofs that are underneath tile roofs. But for U.S. concrete roofs, U.S. tile roofs, concrete tile mostly, I have seen this done, especially with new construction. You know, in California, every new home or new development has to be built with solar, and now it's mandated. So I've seen them a lot of times where they put in comp shingle and they tile around it specifically where the solar is going to be put in. Or I've seen installers just take off all that stuff, put in comp shingle, and then tile around it, especially when you get that cap and barrel stuff and it's really brittle and just fragile. I mean, you look at it and it just breaks. That's where you can put in the comp shingle and tile around it and make it look like, it's almost like it looks like BIPV, building integrated, but it's actually standard racking and it's just comp shingle underneath there. So I have seen some companies do this very successfully, and you're starting to see new construction be done this way, and it's just a lot easier. You can use comp mounts, you can use shared rail if you want, and there's another view there. These are some jobs actually we were out on in a home development. The one on the left, I think it's out in like the Brentwood area here in California. So that's pretty common to do. I do see some questions coming in. Tile replacement, we do have some options. We can send you some information on that. So I'll address these one by one as we get going. One question was just tile replacement flashing. Have that. We have some options for that. So Christian, if you want that information, just let us know and we can work with you there. Metal roofs. I know this is a very popular one as well, especially like out in the Midwest, also in Mexico. Standing seam and trapezoidal are the main metal roofs that we work with. So we have our power clamp, and as I mentioned, we have two sizes. There's a mini and a standard, and that basically is a 2-pin or a single pin, like you see here. I'll pull up my camera again so you can see. So this is a pretty standard standing seam clamp that doesn't penetrate, and then there's the L-foot placed on top. So this is a product that we offer called Power Clamp. We also have mini rail. I don't know if I have a sample. Actually, I do. I have my little, I don't know if you can see my little home training center here. I got a little setup there where when we talk about our racking systems, I have a little setup here, and we do shared rail and dual rail talks all the time. So this is our mini rail, and it has a little pad here that goes on top of the trapezoidal, and it's one screw in each corner that you see there, and it has some options for moving around. So I'll show you some slides to accentuate that a little more. So let's go into. So the mini rail is literally a mini rail. So it's the same channel. We got mids, clamps, and clamps here. Kind of components. Grabbing all the hardware so you guys can see this stuff. So this is the mini rail, and this is a pretty slick system. So it has the same channel. So it's the same channel so that our same mid clamps and end clamps go in is the same method as our CrossRail. So all those other rails I showed you. So this mini rail acts as kind of an in-between each module. So you put this down on the trapezoidal peaks, and you have these little screws here that have a pre-installed sealing washer. Same thing as the actual metal roof. You want to use these specifically that we supply. I know a lot of guys will say, "What we want to swap these out," but these are designed to go through, I think, up to 26 gauge. So you're going into the metal, and that installs there. And then and then you have one in each corner, not all. You don't do every single hole. This is just so you have some flexibility so that you can move it around to where your array is. So you corner out your array, you mark where the module breaks are, and then you can install this, and then this falls in between. You have a module landing here and a module landing here, and then you have your mid clamp that tightens it down, and you're all set to go. And then you don't have to have long extruded rails. I believe they're boxes of 30, and you can, like I said, it shows there where you can put them in between the module breaks, so you don't have long extruded rails. It's a mini rail. So this is really popular in Mexico, and also is becoming more popular in the U.S. kind of Midwest market. And we've also been seeing a lot of installers starting to use this for carports, actually. So if you're doing a carport system, a lot of times there's this trapezoidal metal roof on top. I don't have a picture in here. I should have added this. We do a webinar on metal roofs. I believe we have a recorded version, and I think I go into detail about an existing system that is out there now that an installer spec'd out the mini rail because it was a carport system and it went straight to the metal roofing, not any beams. So it's a pretty slick product, uses the same mids and end clamps as the CrossRail system. So I didn't go into the standing seam, and I apologize. I have one here and one here. And I actually should have pulled up, I'll pull up the metal. If you guys have more questions on metal roofs, I'm surprised I didn't add, I apologize. I usually have I'm just gonna pull it up. I have another slide that shows the metal roofing, and I'll pull that up in a second because it's much more. And we did do a webinar on metal roofs, and I think you'll like this information. So I know I'm going off the beaten path here, but I think you guys will really like this information here. So if you want more on metal roofs while we have the time, it's last time we ran out of time, but now we have plenty of time. So this, I'm just pulling up the deck that is talking about our metal roof systems in more detail. So if you want this information, the whole deck is, the whole webinar was recorded on our website. So you can check out that information, but there was some really good information on the standing seam clamp that I want to show you. So like I mentioned, we have a single pin and a double pin here. So this is what it looks like, one with the alpha, one without, and it comes with the hardware. But I did want to show you real quick, the system. So here we go. So this is our power clamp, and there's the mini, there's the standard. So you could do a single pin or a double pin. This works really great when you're doing shared rail, actually. So I talked about shared rail. The difference between shared rail and dual rail as a standard is you're basically sharing the middle in between two module rows. You have one rail catching both. So a standing seam clamp can slide north-south on that standing seam. So it's pretty easy to do a shared rail system with the metal roof system. So here's a good example of a system that a friend of mine did in Portland, and they went landscape and they did shared rail, and they could fit a lot more modules on here in this orientation. Obviously, portrait, landscape depends on the roof and what's going on in the shape. Most guys default to portrait and they're doing dual rail, but actually if you do, you can do landscape with standard dual rail as well, but it's obviously more racking. But if you're doing this type of system, shared rail ends up playing very nicely and lining up really well. So you can do these kind of pyramid systems in landscape, get more modules on there, and do shared rail and do less attachments and less racking. So if you're interested in that, we do offer a whole webinar on that. We can talk about. But the power clamp, mini and standard, here's kind of a little guide. We don't, we definitely you know, have people installing our systems on S5 clamps, and we really like what S5 does. We did need to provide our own system, so we just have a standard and a mini, and it covers most of the popular types of metal standing seam. So you got these different type of single lock, double lock systems, these snap lock systems, and these different types of profiles. So you can install the standard and mini in most applications, maybe not all of them, but this is a really nice product that covers the majority of the systems out there. And in our calculator, so we have the base tool and we have a calculator, you can enter in the distance between the seams, the height of the seams, and the width of the seams, and you can figure out which product is going to be best for your application. So if you have questions on that, that's what I wanted to show you. If you have questions on that, you can always contact us, and our inside sales team and outside sales team can there and show you how our free online designs. It's all built in, all the engineering is built in there. So again, all the components are the same as the full CrossRail system. So same rail, same L-foot, same ends and mids, the new hidden end clamp, which is called our Yeti clamp. And then if you're going to do shared rail, we have this add-on that goes into the rail as well, that you can do to share the rail, and we can talk about that. So there's an example of the shared rail if you're wondering about it and how it works. So I'll just full screen this. Just to answer that, I'm sure people are wondering about shared rail. So if you take a mid clamp, here real quick. Here we go. So this is our rail with our it's just a little sample. This is our mid clamp. You just grab these tabs. If you've never put one of these in, you should try it with a sample kit. It's really a nice product. It goes in there and then it's nice and secure. It's spring loaded and you can move it around and it's ready for modules to come in. So on a shared rail system, you basically put this add-on, what we call an add-on, and straddle the clamp, and now you turn this to the side, and if you look, you have a nice shelf here where you can put one module here and one module here, and it shares the rail. So there's a picture there in the slide. You can see where the add-on is on the rail with an example of a standing seam roof with our power clamp. That is a really good combination. And the beauty of this system is you don't have to do shared rail if you don't want to. The same components minus the add-on, same mid, same ends, work as a standard dual rail where you just put two rails, or a shared rail. Sometimes you can just do it right on the fly where you see where a system might, maybe you kicked off, the as-built always changes at times. So you can always change and adapt on the fly if like a module is kicked out, or there's one last module hanging out by itself, or you add one to the top. You can do a shared rail right on the fly as long as you have the add-on, and you can add that system on there if it's, less penetrations in the roof. So just a nice little tip. If you want more information on that, it's on our website, and we have webinars in shared and dual rail. So I'll move on to low slope roofs here. Excuse me. Okay, so I hear my throat getting a little more grunge rock right now. We have a lot of fires up here, and I have the windows open. There's no smoke, but a lot of people are getting a little sore throats from the smoke in the air. So bear with me a little bit here. So the low slope roofs, a lot of times in the solar industry, we call them flat roofs, but there's no such thing as a flat roof in the roofing industry. There's always some kind of pitch or slope to the roof, so water can shed out. So some of the most common ones are TPO. You have some EPDM roofs, rolled asphalt, tar and gravel. These are also some of the most common ones that you see there. And then also concrete. It's more popular in Mexico, but you do get concrete roofs here in the US sometimes. So we have different attachment methods and different racking systems designed for this. So if you look at the top left there, excuse me, that's our D-dome system. it's a pretty slick system to where you're installing this railless T-dome. That's probably the older version. We have a newer version of it where you don't need, actually no, I think that's current. But you don't need a lot of hardware for this. It's pretty slick, and it has a peak and a base, and it allows you to do a dual tilt system. We'll talk about that here in a minute. That's our most common for like some of these flat roof applications. And the image on the left is a good example of what's called a mechanically fastened membrane roof. So if you look there, it says TPO mechanically attached membrane. So what the difference is there's mechanically attached and there's adhered. And the adhered is just like it sounds. It's glued down, and they glue down the entire material. And that's important to know because if you have slip sheets or bases that cover it, like in our case, you want to make sure that the roof manufacturer is going to approve that. So on you see there, it says approved fasteners. That's where they have like a lip underneath and they mechanically fasten it. So instead of gluing it down, they pull the roofing material out tight, and they usually have like a little tool. I've seen some on a roller where they nail down, and they can nail a series of nails into that fastening kind of flap, and then they flap over, and that's sealed, and they flap over the other side of the roofing material, and they keep going, and they have these mechanical attached sections. And so the reason why that's important is because you can see actually on there where the seam is. And if you have pads on there, you want to make sure it's going to protect and not rub through right on those fasteners. So our pads are a soft material that protects these pads, but you ultimately want to check with the roof manufacturer and make sure they allow things like these pads, or maybe they want slip sheets underneath there, an additional pad underneath the pad, the riser pad there. So that's important to know. With rolled asphalt shingles, we have a new product called the T-foot. This is our T-foot X, and I'll show that. I've seen a lot of people do these on tar and gravel too, where they remove the tar or the gravel and get down to the tar, and they install our new T-foot X. This is a pretty slick product. It's got two sections for lags here. There's two holes here, so you can attach there. So you can attach two lags, and then you have, instead of a standoff and an L-foot, you have just a straight L-foot, and you can put the L-foot's built in, so to say. It's not really an L, it's a T, and so you can put it straight to the rail and avoid any additional hardware. So these work beautifully with the ChemLink E-Curb 4-inch. It's the smaller one. You can put this in there, lag it down to your structure or whatever you're engineered to attach to, and then you can do the M1 and the 3-part that comes with the ChemLink E-Curb. So that's a brand new product. It actually has flown off the shelf. There's the part number, but definitely check with your rep because it's brand new. So all the new products that are coming in, that not all our distributors have ordered it, so you just want to check with them. So you'll start seeing part numbers on here for some of these products. And we did attach a handout that's in there that shows some of our new products coming out, and the part numbers are all in there. So if you look in your handouts there, we already uploaded it. I think Lauren uploaded it already, where it shows you all these new products that we're talking about. So again, we had that product kind of fly off the roof, not fly off the roof, fly off the shelf, fly off the shelf, hopefully not fly off the roof, none so far. No, this is a pretty robust product, and it's definitely, like I said, flown off the shelf because people really liked it. It was ended by an installer. We worked with our engineers and tested it and we have seen it installed successfully. Like you see, there's our tilt-up system with standoffs and L feet, pretty standard, but that was an older system out in Tucson, Arizona, but now I think they're using our T-foot X there in that same application. So the D-Dome railless system, as I mentioned, is a dual tilt system. So some people call it an east-west system instead of just south-facing. So there's no inner row shading. It's usually an east-west orientation for maximum output, really. And what happens with the D-Dome system, since you have a dual tilt, so to say, you have less ballast blocks on there. So it's less bringing up less labor bringing up blocks, and you have these pads that protect the roof and a peak and a base, and it uses some of our same mids and ends as the CrossRail system. It just depends on the thickness of your frame. It's a pre set 10-degree inclination there. So if you have questions on this, we have a full webinar on this. I believe that's also recorded, and on our website we go into the details of designing these systems. And this is also, all these systems are in our base tool. Base is our design tool, so you can go in there and design these systems in our base tool. And if you want training on that, our inside sales team and outside sales team can provide training for you. It's a free tool. It's all the engineering is built in, and we just got ASCE 716 letters for all our racking. So that's really important because different states are starting to move to that. I believe Colorado's already on 716. So that all the engineering gets built into the design software, and then 716 is just getting added now as we've just accomplished all the letters for those different states. So if you want information on that, you want to see the difference between dual rail and shared rail, you can do it right into the tool. So again, all the components are the same. I mentioned 44X coming into play. This is a new system to where it's a lighter weight rail, but it doesn't mean it's light in the sense that it's not, some people may have a light rail that's specifically for like the Southern California market. This is not just a light rail. Lighter weight rail, but it's optimized to be strong enough for various snow loads and high wind loads, or wind speeds. So definitely go in and check this out. I have a good example here. I'll try to see if I can show you. So this is let me show you. This is the profile of 48X and 48XL next to each other. You can see the 48XL is as extra large. It's thicker, more robust, pretty heavy duty. And then you have 48XX, which is pretty robust in itself. The numbers actually come from the height of the rail profile. And now we've introduced 44X. So you can see the change in the profile, the slight change in profile where we've optimized it, a little bit more of a box shape there, but it's still really, really strong, and it's a lot lighter weight. And so it brings down the cost, material, weight, shifting onto the roof, handling, but it's still very robust and can be installed with standard 6-foot, 4-foot spans in most areas. So just check our design tool that's being added now. It just was released, so you can check that out. And then we did improve our mid clamp as well, to where all of our rails have wire management space. So in that channel, you can run your wires, right? Which is really nice. You can run your wires on the side here. We have clips, or you can run on the side here. We have clips on the side. If you have a big home run and you want to put a big chunk of wire bundle on the side, you can. But for a couple wires from module to module, or microinverter to microinverter, or optimizer to optimizer, or whatever you're doing, you can run some wires in here as well. And we do have a new mid clamp that allows for more wire management space. So what's happening here is now you have this cylinder that receives the bolt and allows for more wire management space in there, and you're not going to have any interference. So that's a new addition to our clamp. You'll see that on the handout that I linked to. Lauren so kindly put on the website. So, and a single tool is all of our systems. Here's basically what I was talking about, optimizing the CrossRail 44 to be a more robust system. So all of our system now are single tool. So that means now you can install the complete system with a single tool. So apologize for the trucks going by. It's loud out there. So this is the, here's a good example of the Allen bolt and the hex head. So we've transitioned our hardware to a single tool, meaning you can just use a 13mm socket on all the hardware. And I know people are like, why not 1/2 inch? We're a European-based company, and pretty much everywhere they're using metric except for the US. So the beauty is we did a bunch of tests, and you can use a 13mm socket on a 5/16 lag that normally takes a 1/2 inch socket. It works just fine. Whereas you do a reverse 1/2 inch socket on a 13mm bolt hex, it's a little tight, but it works. But 13mm socket, just buy a 13mm socket, or we're doing handouts now. We have a branded version if you want it, and you're going to start trying this system. Show us, and we will send you that if you're going to be using single tool. So now you can install a complete system with socket, which is huge for installers that are trying to be efficient and fast. So again, you can go on our website or just grab that handout, and there's some images to show you the difference in the clamps that I mentioned, the wire management. All the new hex hardware has the H at the end. So if you're on the distribution side and you're wondering about ordering this, you have the same part number, it just has an H at the end. So there's the hex, there's that cylinder that gives you more wire management in the rail channel. So all of our clamps, we have various end clamps and mid clamps, and well, we have 2 different end clamps actually. There's the hidden and there's the standard. The standard is going to always be there, and that just grabs the end. You have to have a little bit of rail output, usually just to the end of this plastic here, and then you have that rail kick out. But if you have a system that's right on the edge of the roof, and you can see from the home, or it's on the front of the house and you're walking right up to it, right at the front door, and you want to tuck those rails in, we have the Yeti clamp, which I have one here. So this allows you to put the, let's see, pull that camera up again. This is for hiding the rail, so you can cut the rail flush. Usually when you have the module down, I just put the module down, mark it where you want to cut the rail flush, lift up the module, chop off the rail section, and then you can put in this hidden end clamp here to the side, and that goes in. And then when you put the module frame back down, this goes over the flange, and then this bites down and holds it to the frame of the module, as you can see in that picture there. So it's a pretty slick little product, and we did just transition this to the hex, so now this is a single tool as well. So definitely go to our website, check it out. We have that in the handout as well. So this is just going all over the components. You can see we changed an Allen, or sorry, from an Allen to a hex for the single. Ground lug, same thing. We did add a thicker add-on so you can get some wire management into shared rail, where you can put a wire underneath the system, because the array, the frame is going to be here on a shared rail, and you can put wires, and you jump from row to row, you put wire in there, and change we made to our system. So I do want to, I know we're getting to the end here, so I want to make sure we have questions answered. So wire management tools, I mentioned some wire management. There's some of the part numbers of the TC wire clip. That's a brand new product. I have one right here too. This is a really slick product to where if you're putting wires in the rail channel and you need to jump out and you want to have it pulled taut there so that the wire doesn't come out when it's transitioning to the next row, you can put this little clip on here, and it clips on and it holds the wire in place. So that's a nice little product that was requested by installer, and we made it, and it works really well. So that's the TC wire management clip. It's brand new. We have some Omegas as well that go into the side channel, and the Hay clip is also a side slot that that goes on there. It's really nice for like connectors. You can see the examples there. When you put connectors on, it's kind of nice to have those on the outside of the rail and then tuck them in and put them in nice and tight to the rails. So again, this handout is on the link there. If you go to handouts, you can click down, you can download it on our website as well. So Basecamp is where you'll find all the videos, webinars that I mentioned. There's all kinds of new webinars just posted and videos. This one will be added. We have a recorded version of this as well. And then all our trainings and road shows. Obviously, we're not doing a lot of road shows because of the times, pandemic and whatnot. But we're doing a lot more training here. And if you want training for your crew or somebody missed this and you want to go over stuff like this, we can do custom training for you guys. I usually manage a lot of that. So you can email me and we can provide some training for your team. If there's some downtime where you can't get out to the job, but you want to train your crews on the system, we do a lot of technical training that I can tailor to your needs based on. So if you have questions, you can email us, call us. There's the general line, the general email. NAPSEP credits we will send out. Just be patient. We have to do them one by one. So just let us know if you have questions. My information is there. I'm typically out on job sites or doing training content, but obviously it's a little bit different now. So we're providing a lot of digital training, and I also work on a lot of product development. So if you've got questions on products, what's coming, we're doing a lot of meetings with customers to see what they like, what they don't like, and what they want to see us up with for solutions. So I'm going to pull up the question box, and now is the time to start blasting them in there. So let me read a couple here and see what we got. Tile replacement, Christian, I did mention that we do have some coming. We do spec out an existing one, so just check our website and contact your local rep and we can guide you to the right direction. So all of our hooks work with standard replacement flashings that are out there. So what would be a good attachment for concrete? I'm gonna move this over here so it's easier. Concrete roof. So we did a tilt up video and we showed some like wedge bolts. We don't spec out concrete anchors, but we do have some suggestions where you basically drill a hole into concrete, and then there's these like wedge anchors. I think Hilti makes them, and you can drill it. You basically hammer it in, and then it's got sealant on it. So you seal the hole, hammer it in, you drive it in so it expands like an expansion bolt, and then you loosen it and it pulls just the bolt out and the wedge stays in place and it provides an anchor in there. So you can check those out. We don't spec them out ourselves, but there's different ones, and our Mexico team is really versed in that. So Sam, if you have more questions on the concrete roofs, we can try to find some specific ones, but it depends on the type of concrete roof you're working with. You want to make sure there's no rebar in there that you're going to hit or some kind of tension wires. That can be a problem. So just make sure on that. Standard reach out building department for info. Is it standard to reach out to building departments for roof info? It's not standard, but if you're doing an install, that's a great question. If you're doing an install, you got the job and you're going to be submitting plans for a job, you can ask the office for if there's information on the roof. You know, hopefully there's no inspectors on here. I'm not trying to bash them, but you know, some are more easy to work with than others, and some are difficult. So you definitely want to play nice with your local building department and building inspector, and it's really case by case. Some of them are very helpful and they'll help you and try to find information, but you can try to reach out. And if you're submitting the building permit for the job, then you can try to ask for that information or do some investigation. Again, that information might be long gone, or they might not help you and you're on your own, but you can try to figure it out. The next question was, are you seeing installers still take attic pictures during COVID? That's a great question, and I doubt it. Unless you go in there all masked up, I would definitely, if you have to get into the attic, which sometimes you do, that's a great question. I haven't asked any installers yet, and I appreciate that question. I would assume, when you're going in the attic, you want a mask and goggles anyways, because it's nasty in there. Sometimes you got some insulation that has some of that old asbestos that gets in your arms. I always wear long sleeve, literally like lab goggles so that it doesn't get in your eyes, that are clear, headlamp, and a mask. And if you can, get the respirator type. So if you're going in there all, labbed up anyways, I would just start from outside that way and clearly communicate with the homeowner that you need to make that visit and come in. And I think it's possible. There's different regulations in different states. Everybody's at different levels of risk. So you just want to make sure the homeowner's comfortable. But I'm pretty sure installers are still trying to get into the attic, and they're just suiting up and making sure that they have face coverings, masks. I would say are more of a respirator type, like the kind that you paint with that has the breathing filters. That's probably best. Is it being recorded? I'm guessing the webinar. Yes, we are recording, so we'll have this all on the website for you guys to watch later. Can you do this with comp too? I'm not sure. Oh, shared rail. Yes, comp is, so that's a great question. So shared rail is only on comp roofs and metal roofs, sorry. Comp and metal have the adjustability, like we have the adjustable, because you need to be able to get your rail at the front and the back between modules, so you have to be in a specific spot, right? So this allows you to do that. I'm trying to find my pic. There's my camera. This allows you to slide on a comp roof. This has a flashing. So this is our slider kit, and you slide this on and you bolt this down with a lag screw, and then you put on the L foot, and that allows you to have some adjustability north and south, right? So you can get the rail in the right spot. And then on metal roofs, you would just use on standing seam roofs, you can use this standing seam, and that doesn't need any additional slider. It already is on a north-south adjustable standing seam. But for tile, you would not do shared rail. So that's a good question. So shared rail is comp and standing seam metal roof only. Tile, you would do standard dual rail. And again, it's the same components. So I think that's all the questions there. If I didn't answer a question, feel free to email us at info@ or marketing@. That all goes to all of us, so we'll get those emails, and you can call us as well. We do have some folks in the office still. Most of our inside sales team is working from home, but the numbers will patch over to them. So if you have questions, please let us know. And this will be recorded, and we will hand out NABCEP credits as requested. So if you want one, let us know, and we will send them out one by one. So I appreciate all the questions and your guys' time today. I hope that was helpful. We will continue to do this. So there's some information at the end. If you've got, type in your recommendations too, because I like hearing from you guys if this was good, helpful, or you want to hear more about something else, and we'll add to that. So go ahead and enter in your comments, and we'll take those and adjust our training. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and be safe out there, and let us know if you need any help with Everest. Have a good day.